Sponsored by Audible. Hello my beautiful watchers, I am so glad that you've decided to join me for another look back at what is possibly the most seminal series in the child fantasy genre, the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, and the prequel novel he decided to throw into the works to shine a little light on the creation of Narnia itself. I'm quite excited about this because the last time I did one of these videos it was surprisingly popular. I would like to think it wasn't just because of the snake boobs in the thumbnail, but this is the internet. As you can see, I went with something way more subtle this time around. Oh, and if you're wondering why I stopped reviewing these books in order, I may or may not have gotten completely mixed up and not realised my mistake until I was already basically done writing. It should be okay though, I don't think The Horse and His Boy is going anywhere. Anyways, just as a quick reminder, C.S. Lewis was a British author who held esteemed positions teaching literature at both Oxford and Cambridge universities and spent his free time quaffing drinks with J.R.R. Tolkien and being a devout Christian. All of these things had a profound influence on his work, which is why a lead character in all of his books is the literal Lord Jesus Christ who has taken the form of a mighty lion. Oh, speaking of which, these very, very funny shirts, which I personally designed, are available in my merch store, link in the video description. The Magician's Nephew, published in 1955, is the sixth book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. It's set about 40 years before the events of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe in human time, and 1,000 years before in Narnian time. In addition to explaining a ton of things about Narnia, including but not limited to why the fuck is there a lamppost in a forest, this book also dumps a ton of other batshit crazy things into the lore all at once. In the first two chapters alone, we find out that Sherlock Holmes was canonically a real person in this world, and Arthurian legends, the Fey folk, and fucking Atlantis all existed and played a part in the creation of Narnia, making this the second time I've discovered unexpected Atlantis in the origin story added to a popular book series. Interestingly, in the same sentence in which he referenced Sherlock Holmes, Lewis also name-dropped the Bastables, which is a reference to the works of Edith Nesbit, an author Lewis cited as being a huge influence for his own writing, and indeed, The Magician's Nephew in particular follows a lot of the same plot beats as her 1906 children's novel, The Story of the Amulet. This prequel also gives us a peek into the life of the undisputed best villain of the series, the White Witch, and a taste of just how much of a boss bitch she was before she finally met her end in Aslan's jaws 1,000 years later. The two leads of the story are 11-year-old Digory Kirk, who you'll no doubt remember was the mysterious but kindly professor who owned the house the Pevensies were sent to in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and his childhood friend Polly. Just before jumping into the synopsis, if you would like to experience this story for yourself, I have got you hella covered, fam. The complete Chronicles of Narnia, from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe to The Last Battle, is available in a single audiobook on Audible, and it's one of the best sets of narrators I've been fortunate enough to come across in ages, including Kenneth Branagh, Alex Jennings, Michael York, and Patrick Stewart. With Audible membership, you get a credit every month that can be redeemed for any audiobook in their unparalleled library, regardless of its selling price, and right now, for a limited time, you have the chance to save 60% on your first 3 months by going to audible.com/thedom or texting the DOM to 500-500. This would allow you to snag you some good C.S. Lewis action and your pick of almost every other story I've talked about recently for a mere $5.95 a month. Audiobooks give you the chance to enjoy the tales you love even if you have a hectic lifestyle. You can take them with you when you go driving, working out at the gym, or just getting all of that annoying but essential life stuff done around the house. So, to see what your first awesome listen will be, go to audible.com/thedom or text the DOM to 500-500. Right then, where was I? Ah yes, the story begins with Polly, a London native, meeting her future BFF Digory soon after he's forced to move to the city from the country. She quickly learns that he is not a happy bunny about this development. It transpires that his father is away in India and his mother has come to stay with her sister due to a fatal illness, and, to add insult to injury, another of his mother's siblings, an Uncle Andrew, is also there and seems to be a total creepo. Despite Digory's understandable depression, they become friends and eventually decide to explore a maintenance tunnel that she discovered in her house to see where it leads. Unfortunately, it turns out to lead to creepy Uncle Andrew's private study, and they are politely but firmly barred from leaving again by the nasty old weirdo. In true stranger danger fashion, he makes some inappropriate comments towards Polly, then insists on giving her a gift in the form of one of the yellow rings he has on display in his room, next to an equal number of green ones. In a shocking twist, as soon as she touches it, she vanishes from the face of the earth, leaving Digory a tad upset and confused. In response to his demands for answers, Uncle A rambles on about inheriting a box of dust from his godmother, Mrs. LaFay, who it turns out was the last living descendant of the fairy folk that used to populate the earth in the olden days. Researching the box had eventually revealed that it was mad ancient, traceable all the way back to the lost city of Atlantis, a prehistoric civilization that had apparently cracked magical interdimensional travel, and the dust was samples they had collected from other worlds. Andrew had subsequently dedicated his life to becoming a magician and harnessing the power of this otherworldly material, eventually succeeding in using it to form the rings that were before them now. The yellow rings evidently teleported the wearer into another world, and supposedly the green ones would bring them back, but Andrew was too much of a snivelling pile of wuss to test this theory on himself, so had been awaiting suitable test subjects, e.g. 2 exploring children. Knowing that Polly lacked the green ring required to return home, Digory is guilted into going after her on a rescue mission. Armed with 2 green boys, he puts on a yellow ring and finds himself emerging from a small pool of water in a forested area that, as far as the eye can see, is filled with almost identical pools. Polly is there, but it takes them a second or two to recognize each other because the magical air in this forest is so thick with life it gets them stoned off their tits from just breathing in and out. They eventually decide this woodland is a world between worlds, with each pool leading to a unique dimension in a near infinite multiverse, and after some negotiating, decide that seeing as they've been thrust into this weird situation, they might as well use the opportunity to explore some of them. First though, they quickly test out the green rings by half traveling back to Earth. It's working! Switch! Cheerio, arsehole! Oh. The next planet they visit turns out to be completely dead, a lifeless world filled with nothing but the crumbling ruins of former great cities. After further exploration, they find a castle in slightly better nick than the rest of the gaff, and within a very long hall with statues of what appears to be the world's rulers. The ones near the entrance seem to depict pretty chill people, but the further in you walk, the more angry and cruel these statues appear to become, until the last in line, a 7-foot-tall woman who, while stunningly beautiful, looks like she would shank you as soon as look at you. Next to her is a bell and an inscription. Make your choice, adventurous stranger. Strike the bell and bide the danger, or wander till it drives you mad what would have followed if you had. Polly votes for showing the bare minimum common sense and not activating the obvious trap, but Digory apparently just hit puberty because he is willing to do anything a hot statue tells him to and rings that ding-a-ling real good. Not terribly surprisingly, this unpetrifies the big girl and we're reintroduced to the lean, mean queen with a dream, the White Witch herself, Empress Jadis of Charn. That said, she's not actually all that white yet, but she has the same hard-ass attitude and boss bitch energy. Case in point, the castle immediately starts to fall down around them, but she still strolls out of there, giving the kids a running commentary on her family's evil history as she goes.
I'll tell you the sitch! I'll give you my pitch! You better not flinch! A 7-foot grinch!
It turns out that her family had been the rulers of Charn for generations, but she had attempted to usurp the throne from her older sister in a long and bloody magical civil war. When her side eventually lost, she used a spell that wiped out all life on the planet and turned herself to stone in a if I can't have it, no one can dick move. After learning how the kids got there, she assumes that Uncle Andrew must be the Earth's ruler and demands that they take her there so that she can subjugate him and rule instead. They understandably try to ditch her, but she grabs onto Polly's hair, she slips the ring on and gets a free ride to the Between World, which is apparently so brimming with life energy it almost kills her. Digory then fucks up yet again by hesitating to abandon her to certain death for just long enough for her to pull herself together and hitchhike with them through the Earth Pond, arriving in London. She immediately starts making Andrew her bitch, ordering him to wait on her hand and foot as she acclimatizes to this new planet, and he is 100% okay with it because, well, it turns out that if Uncle A had been born into our time, he would have been one of those people who lost their minds over Resident Evil Village, and seeing all 7 foot of the Empress Jadis fully awakens the simp within him. Jadis quickly discovers that her magical powers have abandoned her in this world, but she's still as strong as the Hulk and just as angry, so during the single night that she's on Earth, she throws a woman across a room, robs a jewelry store, surfs a handsome cab down the street like she's a 19th century teen wolf, and beats the piss out of a squad of police policeman with a rod of metal that she tore off a lamppost. While people are distracted by the resulting carnage and a very unlucky cabbie is trying to rescue his horse from the wreckage of his cart, the kids finally get a chance to grab Her Highness and zap her back into the magical forest. Unfortunately, they accidentally also drag along Uncle Andrew, the cab driver, and the frickin' horse. After another scuffle, they fall into yet another pool and end up in a void. A universe with absolutely nothing in it. Now, you would think that this would be quite upsetting, or at least very confusing for this London cab driver, but he proves to be the most chill, optimistic dude in this or any other universe. I wouldn't worry about it, chaps. Worse things have happened at sea, you know. If we've fallen down a pit, I'm sure someone will be along to rescue us shortly, and if we're dead, well, as long as you've led a good life, I'm sure we'll be fine. Let's sing a hymn, shall we? Jesus, Jesus, I sure do love Jesus. Come on, everybody. Jesus! Things don't stay voidy for long, though, as a familiar-looking lion shows up and starts singing the world into existence, literally summoning things into being with nothing but the power of his heavenly voice. Jadis doesn't think much of him and lobs her lamppost rod at his face, but it bounces off his skull without fazing him whatsoever, and because the world is currently vibing with creation magic, it grows into a lamppost as if it were bamboo cutting, which is why there is a lamppost in Narnia. Also, apparently throw lamppost at lion was Jadis's only idea, because after that fails, she cheeses it over the newly formed horizon. Aslan then creates all of the animals of the world and makes them sapient and able to talk. The cab-pulling horse that came with them from Earth is included in this and immediately starts debating with his former owner about the ethics of utilizing beasts of burden. Uncle Andrew faints at this point and spends the rest of the book getting pushed around by well-meaning animals that just don't really understand what his deal is. As he's proven to be a good Christian man, Aslan decides to make the cabbie the first king of Narnia, teleporting his wife in from Earth to join him. FYI, the guy's name turns out to be Frank. King Frank I. During all this, Digory has been reasoning that as this kitty is clearly some sort of deity, he might have the power to cure his mother's illness. However, this hope gets immediately derailed when Aslan asks him if there's anything he wants to share with the group, because he can't help but notice that this lovely new world that he just created already has a tall, sexy Satan allegory in it. To give him a chance to redeem himself, Floof Jesus sends him on a quest to go and get a magical apple from an orchard on the other side of the world, as planting a tree with it in the middle of Narnia would create a magical smell that would keep the witch at bay for a few centuries. This seems at first to be a significant enough task to be the setup for a whole other sequel book, but Aslan expedites matters by giving the horse wings and asking him to give him a lift there. On arrival, Digory finds yet another inscription warning. Come in by the golden gates or not at all. Take off my fruit for others or forbear. For those who steal or those who climb my wall shall find their heart's desire and find despair. Sup? Yes, old Jadis made it there before them and is already chowing down on the magical apples. Apparently they have the power to make her young and powerful forever, but at the cost of being miserable the entire time, and making her pale as heck to boot. A cost that she clearly decided was a worthwhile trade-off, which is why she is the White Witch. She tries to tempt Digory into a reboot of the original sin by convincing him that he could use the apple that he grabbed to heal his mother instead of giving it to Kitty Christ, but fortunately the lad is finally done being stupid and tells her to fuck off. Using the apple, Aslan grows his magic force field tree and coronates King Frank the Very Relaxed right beneath it. Now, I assumed that Digory's hard choice and Aslan's compassion for his desperation to help his dear mother was leading to the lad having to learn a hard but essential lesson about accepting the mortality of one's loved ones and learning to live with the grief of loss, but that is because I am a fool who forgot that the Christian Bible is all about having your blind faith rewarded with miracle cures. So, the Holy Chonk gives him another healing apple to return to Earth with, and it restores his mother to full HP, no problem. The kids bury the rings and the magic apple core in Digory's back garden, where it quickly grows into a tree. Many decades later it blows over in a storm, so Digory uses it to build a wardrobe, which is why that whole wardrobe thing was a thing. Digory and Polly stay friends for the rest of their lives, and apparently Uncle Andrew reforms his ways somewhat, giving up magic experimentation and trying to be less evil. But Lewis does make sure that you know, using the literal closing line of the book, that he never stopped thirsting for Jadis. I for one was not expecting the creation of Narnia to be quite so horny, but here we are. So, interesting things of note. If you watched my breakdown of the Silver Chair, you will not in any way be surprised that Lewis threw in a few digs at British schools here and there. The dude must have had such a miserable childhood to be still working through this 6 books in. Like all of the books in the series, the joys of blind obedience to spiritual authority figures holds the top spot in terms of theme. It's kind of funny, this must have gone way over my head when I was a kid, because for so many years, I remembered the Narnia books as being about defying conventions and going off on your own adventure, you know? Just one of those things. In this particular installment, Lewis also brought in a pretty unsubtle pro-countryside, anti-city sentiment, extolling the virtues of the former and blaming the latter for otherwise nice people becoming callous and dishonest. And of course, it would not be a C.S. Lewis book without having religious allegory for days. The most prominent being the aforementioned original sin reenactment with the delicious low-calorie tree of knowledge, and the creation of Narnia is obviously very Book of Genesis, with Godline zapping heaven, earth, and all of its many creatures into existence fully formed without a hint of evolution in sight. Bit random, but one scene in this really tickled me. Uncle Dickhead was gloating about having maneuvered Digory into being his interdimensional guinea pig, and the lad pointed out to him that if what he is telling him is true and fairy tales were real, then he was setting himself up as the villain of the story and will therefore meet a rather sticky end by the end of it. And his uncle's like... And finally, I really like that the great temptation that Digory couldn't resist that ended up tainting an entire world for 1,000 years basically boiled down to graffiti that says, just ring the bell, you pussy. All in all, I can see why this was the second most popular book in the series. While it lacks some of the climactic grandeur of some of the other entries, how gosh damn creative Lewis was when weaving a backstory to a whole ass world more than makes up for it. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Just a quick reminder that there are exclusive episodes of Lost in Adaptation viewable on my Patreon page, and I also have a second YouTube channel that I use for unscripted rambles about books and showing you my sick bladesmithing skills. Links below. If you would be so kind as to do that good YouTube stuff with the likes and the shares and the comments and the bringing Jadis back to life with the bell, I would be most appreciative. Take care of yourselves out there, and I hope you'll join me next time.
Jadis of Sean and its power I'm covered in. Bust out your wardrobe like James P. Sullivan. My magic's the deepest, so pray you don't sight me. I'll tear off a lamppost if you wanna fight me. Like a Hank Hill, making Barbies look foolish, but keep it so chill, you call me Jennifer Coolidge. Sing like a lion, I'll leave you in stitches. Now call up Fox News, cause I'm canceling Christmas. I'll tell you to sit. I'll give you my pitch. You better not flinch. A 7-foot Grinch.
Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Hope, Satel Spurdloff, and Trace Carter. Shout out to Ilnej for the credits music, check out his channel for more parody and original songs, and a huge thank you to this video's co-producer, Kate Robinson. She does some awesome work on her channel, so be sure to check that out too. Child fantasy genre, the Chronicles... Good start. To the same plot beats as her 1906 novel, The Children of the Story of the Amulet. What? Words just came out of my mouth.